Have you ever wondered how some men, even without academic degrees, manage to learn more, understand more, and accomplish more than most people who have spent their lives in school? Have you ever wondered why so many people drown in information overload but remain unable to transform knowledge into real power? Well, I'm going to tell you something that was never taught to me in books, but that has shaped every decision in my life. The speed at which you learn does not depend on your intelligence. It depends on your discipline, your intention, and your inner silence. No, I'm not talking about modern memorization techniques or cheap mental hacks. I'm talking about a learning method that builds empires. A way of thinking that turns simple reading into capital. A model that not only absorbs knowledge, but transforms it into authority, profit, and impact. As a young man, still selling grain and calculating pennies in the ledger my mother taught me to keep, I realized something fundamental. Every man can be self-taught, but only the disciplined learn what matters, at the pace that matters, with the depth necessary to make a difference. The secret, then, is not knowing a lot. It's knowing exactly what needs to be learned, and mastering it until it becomes part of who you are. You see, the modern world is drowning in excess. Most people read too much, listen too much, consume too much, and apply almost nothing. They live like bookshelves full of unread books. Sound familiar? That is the great illusion of the century, confusing accumulation with wisdom. I learned to do the opposite. I learned to select, filter, apply, and repeat, until knowledge ceased to be information and became an unshakable conviction within me. In my youth, whenever I came across something new, whether it was an accounting concept, market dynamics, or a new way of dealing with people, my first impulse was simple: stop, listen, reflect in silence, then write, and finally, apply it immediately, deliberately. In some aspect of my routine, this triad has accompanied me throughout my life: silence, writing, application, silence, to understand, without interruptions, writing to consolidate, as if each idea had to pass through me before existing in the world, an action to transform learning into living experience. Without this, everything was lost. Do you want to learn something new? Learn with purpose. Don't read out of anxiety. Don't study out of vanity. Don't seek knowledge to appear intelligent. Seek it to solve something. Seek it with a hunger for mastery. When I decided to go into the oil business, I knew nothing about refining, rail transportation, or mergers and acquisitions, but within a few months, I knew enough to negotiate with the biggest businessmen of the time, because my learning was driven by urgency, focus, and direct application. I didn't want to know everything about oil. I wanted to know exactly what was necessary to make the best possible decisions at the right time. And here's a fundamental principle: if you want to learn fast, learn what you need to know, but learn it thoroughly. Most people never become masters because they prefer to know a little about everything rather than become excellent at something essential. If you master a principle thoroughly, you can apply that principle in dozens of areas. But if you try to master everything superficially, you will never be respected, nor will you be able to turn that knowledge into value. In my youth, many saw me as reserved. Others saw me as obsessive. But I was just learning strategically. I listened twice as much as I spoke. I observed more than I gave opinions. And I wrote everything down. Writing was my ritual for reflection. Each page I wrote was a seed planted in the fertile soil of my mind. What's more, I repeated it. I repeated it until I knew it by heart. I repeated it in my thoughts, in writing, in decisions. Repetition is what transforms knowledge into instinct. When you repeat with purpose, you incorporate it. And when you incorporate it, you act naturally, even in the most challenging situations. This is another lesson that the modern world has forgotten. The rush to learn superficially prevents wisdom from taking root. You ask me, but how can I learn anything quickly? And I answer, define what you really need to learn. Eliminate the rest. Find a reliable source. Study in silence. Reflect in writing. Apply immediately. Repeat until you master it. Sounds simple. It is, but it's so powerful that few can endure the discipline required to do it consistently. Many want speed, but they don't accept silence. They want results, but they despise the process. They want the right answer, but they refuse to ask the right question. Learning fast is, above all, a listening skill. Listening to the world. Listening to the masters. Listening to yourself. And that silence, when cultivated with discipline, transforms your brain into a fortress of powerful decisions. I still remember the moment when I needed to understand complex legal contracts that could decide the future of Standard Oil. I didn't go to college for that. Instead, I sat for hours with my lawyers, absorbing every term as if it were a life and death equation. I asked questions, reread, compared, took notes, and before the week was over, I understood more about contract law than many who had spent years studying it, because when the purpose is clear, the mind opens up. When the pressure is real, absorption accelerates. And when repetition is daily, learning becomes automatic. You can do it too. But you have to let go of the noise, the rush, the distraction. You have to treat learning as a sacred act, not a vanity race. And here's the most important part. Don't just learn for yourself. Learn to serve better, to lead better, to multiply. The learning that sticks is the learning that creates value for others. That's the learning that builds a legacy. Now tell me, are you willing to learn deeply? Are you willing to give up the anxiety for easy answers and dive into the discipline of those who learn with purpose? If the answer is yes, write in the comments, I choose to learn with purpose. Because today's decision defines tomorrow's mastery. When I chose to learn with purpose, I began to see the world differently. Conversations were no longer distractions, but became sources of valuable information. Every business meeting was a classroom. Every failure was a living thesis. Every challenge was a practical test of what I had absorbed. What separates ordinary men from men who master their time is not talent or luck, it's how they learn from everyday life. The world is talking to you all the time, but only those who listen with attentive eyes and a disciplined mind learn. That's why I want you to understand a non-negotiable principle. Faster learning does not happen through consumption, but through observation. The mind that only consumes is distracted. The mind that observes transforms. While many sought to learn more, I sought to learn better, and the best learning always happened when I was looking inward. In silence, absorbing the behavior of others, the movements of the market, the words of a competitor, the data in a report. While others filled their heads with other people's words, I became intimate with my own reasoning. Because true wisdom begins when you become capable of thinking deeply and making decisions based on what you already know, not on what the world is shouting around you. Do you want to learn faster? Turn down the noise. Reduce the number of voices that influence you. You won't change your life by reading 10 books a month. You'll change it by studying a single principle until it's tattooed on your soul and manifests itself in every gesture of your day. I have known many educated men who have failed, but I have never known a man who was disciplined in learning who has not succeeded in some measure. And do you know why? Because true knowledge is like invested capital when cultivated with discipline. It generates dividends for decades. Early in my career, one of the first skills I decided to master was the art of dealing with numbers. It wasn't enough to understand the basics of accounting. I wanted to see the heart of a business when I looked at its finances. So I studied accounting books, redid balance sheets, compared reports. I became obsessed with every penny. I would often spend hours analyzing income and expense records, asking my employees about the reason for each expense, each variation. I did this not out of excessive control, but because I understood that if I didn't master the numbers would master my destiny. This is the kind of learning that transforms, because it is linked to a real decision, a real risk, a direct impact. Learning fast, therefore, is not learning everything at once. It is choosing a single thing, a single field, a single skill, and diving into it like someone digging for oil, with patience, precision, and strategy. What's more, you need to develop the courage to unlearn. That's what I see most often holding back the progress of intelligent people. They cling to old ideas, outdated concepts, truths that no longer work. In today's world, I myself had to unlearn that charity was just giving, to relearn that it was a strategy for impact, unlearn that an employee was only worth what they produced, to relearn that they were worth what they multiplied around them, unlearn that learning is accumulating, to relearn that learning is transforming. With each decade, my methods changed, my habits adapted, but the principles remained. Learn with purpose, apply immediately, and eliminate what no longer works. And here's another hard truth that few accept. The speed of your learning depends on the clarity of your priorities. Those with unclear priorities live in constant distraction. Those with clear priorities live in constant progress. If you say you want to learn English but can't even attend one class a week with full focus, the problem isn't your mental capacity. The problem is that this goal isn't anchored in a real priority in your life. It's a vague desire, not a vital commitment. You need to turn every learning experience into a life commitment. As long as there is no emotional urgency, you will procrastinate. You will put it off until later. You will look for shortcuts instead of mastery. And at that pace, life passes you by, and you remain stagnant, surrounded by books, videos, motivational quotes, and empty results. I learned to prioritize ruthlessly. There wasn't room for everything. There wasn't energy for everything. So I chose what to learn based on two criteria: direct impact on my goals and immediate applicability. If it didn't change my destiny, I discarded it. If I couldn't apply it now, I postponed it. This filter allowed me to move forward with surgical precision. While others got lost in complexity, I remained simple and efficient. Today, many young people want to learn how to invest, lead, and scale businesses. And I ask, have you mastered your silence? Have you learned to listen more than you speak? Do you practice repetition until it becomes instinct? Have you written down the 3 decisions that define your week today? Because without that, all learning is theory. All knowledge is unstable. All information is useless. You need to make your mind a reliable system. You need to learn to process, prioritize, apply. You need to become a precision instrument in a world of distraction. And the first step is silence. Not the silence of someone who avoids conflict, but the silence of someone who is listening to learn. The silence of someone who reflects before acting. The silence of someone who is more interested in understanding than in impressing. This silence is the foundation of a mind that learns quickly, because it is in this state that profound ideas enter. That observation becomes strategy. That knowledge becomes decision. If you've made it this far, I want you to write in the comments, "I choose to learn deeply." This is more than a comment, it's a pact with your own evolution. It's a declaration that you will no longer live on the surface. You will dive in. You will study with purpose. You will act with discipline. Do you want to know the difference between someone who learns out of necessity and someone who learns out of conviction? The first learns when the fire is already burning under their feet. The second learns before the fire starts. The first runs after the solution. The second builds bridges before they need to cross the river. That is why, throughout my life, I have sought to develop what I call advanced knowledge. I did not wait for crises to study strategies. I did not wait for bankruptcy to study finance. I did not wait for conflicts to understand people. I prepared myself in advance. And so, when the unexpected happened, as it always does, my mind was ready to act, not to despair. That is why the secret to learning quickly begins long before the act of studying. It begins with the decision to anticipate. It begins with a war mentality in times of peace. Because those who wait for necessity to knock on their door to start learning are already behind. This anticipation made me study psychology when no one in business was talking about it. It made me understand logistics before the word even became popular. It made me learn the language of banks when I was still negotiating small quantities of barrels. All because I saw further ahead, and there is no faster learning than that which is nourished by a vision of the future. But beware, this vision only develops with silence, with quality time to think, and with a rare type of reading, reflective reading. I didn't read to pass the time. I read as if I were talking to an experienced advisor. Each paragraph was a mirror, each idea a provocation. And if it didn't bring about transformation, it was useless to me. Do you want to learn like Rockefeller? Then forget about rushing to finish books and start rereading the same chapters until they provoke you. Real learning begins when reading makes you uncomfortable. When it forces you to change something in your routine, in the way you negotiate, in the way you think. And here's another key. I never learned alone. I always surrounded myself with the best, not the most famous, the best, discreet, effective, experienced people. I knew I could learn more in an afternoon with a skilled accountant than in months listening to loudspeakers. When I wanted to learn about rail transport, I didn't look for the biggest name in the industry, I looked for the operator who solved everyday problems with precision. When I needed to understand politics, I approached local leaders who knew how the real game worked, not theoretical discourse. The secret is not having access to knowledge. It's knowing where it lives. And usually, it lives in those who execute with excellence, not in those who just talk about it. Today, most people seek out famous mentors. I sought out quiet but efficient men. People who didn't need to prove anything because their results spoke for themselves. I learned more from quiet conversations in cramped offices than at any business conference, because there was the naked truth, no makeup, no spectacle. What's more, every lesson I learned immediately became a habit. That's another thing you need to understand. Learning fast requires ritual. The mind needs rhythm. I had set times for reading, reflecting, and reviewing. I did this until it became part of my identity. I didn't read when I had time left over. I made time for it, because I understood early on that every mental habit requires consistency, not intensity. You can have an intense day of study and forget everything in a week, but half an hour a day, done well, can give you more power than many degrees. So, if you really want to learn fast, start organizing your mind like a temple. Set aside a sacred space in your day. even if it's only 20 minutes. Absolute silence, a relevant reading, a clear note, a practical reflection, a question to yourself: how do I apply this today? If you do this for 30 days, something will change. But if you do it for a year, you will no longer be recognizable. Your outlook will change. Your speech will change. Your decisions will become sharper, because your brain will have stopped being reactive and become a generator of direction, and then you will begin to see what no one else sees, and you will know what few know, because now you have not only learned, you have transformed. Another thing I need to tell you, with the frankness of someone who wants to see you truly thrive, there is no learning without discomfort. Every time I learned something important, I had to face my own ignorance. I had to admit I was wrong. I had to let go of certainties. Many people avoid this. They prefer the comfort of superficiality. But I preferred the discomfort of transformation. When something exposed me, I didn't defend myself. I listened, I reevaluated, I corrected myself, and I learned. That's why, over the years, I've developed a personal rule. If something irritates me, it's a sign that I need to study it. If it bothers me, it's because it's showing me a weakness. And every weakness, when faced, can become a strength. Are you willing to do that? To turn criticism into learning, to turn mistakes into adjustments, to turn pride into productive humility. If you are, you will accelerate like never before. Because now you will no longer be learning only from books. You will be learning from life, from every failure, every difficult conversation, every sleepless night, and this is the turning point, when your mind stops seeking validation and starts seeking growth. When you stop seeking to be right and start seeking the truth. When you stop trying to appear strong and start wanting to become strong. This is the kind of mind that learns anything. At any age, in any situation. Because it is no longer afraid of looking like a beginner, of being corrected, or of changing course. Do you want to become that kind of mind? Do you want to stop being someone who just reads about success and start living as someone who turns everything they learn into concrete victory? Then answer me in the comments. My mind is a fortress. Say it, because your words have power. And when you declare it, you activate it. You send a signal to the universe and to your own soul that you are not here out of curiosity. You are here to build. There is a moment in the life of every man who builds something great when he realizes that the biggest battlefield is not the market, nor the competition. It is his own mind. And that is why few learn deeply, because it requires mental discipline. It requires silence. And above all, it requires confrontation with one's own ego. You see, there is no way to learn quickly if you are too busy trying to prove that you already know. True knowledge comes when you let your guard down, when you put yourself in the position of a learner, when you look at each challenge as a mirror that reveals your limitations, not as a threat to your value. That's how I shaped my mind. I wasn't looking to be right. I was looking to evolve. I wasn't looking to be the most acclaimed. I was looking to be the most effective, and that difference gave me speed, while others got caught up in vanity. Learning fast, therefore, is an exercise in humility. It is recognizing that every day you are surrounded by opportunities to grow, but only those with trained eyes can see them. Those with the sensitivity to turn conversations into advice. Those with the maturity to turn criticism into direction. There were times in my career when I had to relearn everything from scratch. When the oil market began to change, I had to study logistics flows again. When political pressure intensified, I had to understand the codes of power and the languages of influence, and when the empire was already established, I had to learn not to let pride destroy what I had built. All of this was only possible because I kept my mind light, ready to receive, ready to change. And that is a point you need to hold on to firmly. A mind that learns quickly is light. It does not carry useless certainties. It does not drag along inflexible opinions. It does not repeat truths that no longer work. And how do you achieve this lightness? With two simple and powerful habits: the habit of asking better questions, and the habit of reviewing what you believe. Ask yourself often, what am I believing that may no longer be true? And what don't I know yet that could change everything in my life? These questions change destinies. They open windows in the brain. They create space for the new. And when the new comes in, the old has to give way. This is the cycle of growth. But here's another secret that few have the courage to apply. You need to create pain to generate rapid learning. Not destructive pain, but strategic pain. The pain of looking at your results with brutal honesty. The pain of setting goals that challenge your comfort zone. The pain of eliminating distractions that make you feel good but prevent you from evolving. When I found myself settling into certain areas, I created new challenges for myself. I didn't wait for failure to shake me up. I shook up my comfort zone, myself, because I knew that without pressure, there is no progress, and without challenge, the brain falls asleep. That's why, if you want to learn fast, you need to live with a slight permanent discomfort. A discomfort that moves you, that drives you, that forces you to grow. Each week, choose an area for improvement. Study, apply, correct, repeat. This is the cycle that shapes the mind that flies high. What's more, stop waiting for motivation to start studying something new. Motivation is a consequence, not a starting point. I started studying accounting because I needed to. I started learning politics because the empire demanded it. I started understanding psychology because dealing with people became essential. There was no glamour in it. There was necessity. And necessity, when well understood, is the best fuel. You don't learn fast because you're excited, you learn fast because you're committed. And that commitment isn't to the world, it's to your own vision of the future. Because every time you learn something new, a new door opens. Every time you master a concept, a new decision becomes clearer. Every time you understand a dynamic, your margin for error decreases. And in the end, what you want is not just to learn, it's to become someone capable of making better, faster, more powerful decisions. That's why every learning habit you build today is shaping your freedom tomorrow. Do you want the freedom to choose who you work with? Then learn how to sell, lead, and communicate. Want financial freedom? Then learn how to invest, analyze risks, and multiply capital. Want emotional freedom? Then learn how to master your impulses, reframe pain, and choose your thoughts. All of this is learning. But real learning, the kind that hurts at first but liberates in the end. And remember, you don't have to learn everything. You just need to learn what changes your reality. Many drown trying to learn too much. I learned what was necessary and in depth. I preferred to be a master of a few subjects than a slave to many. I mastered the art of negotiation, the logic of capital multiplication, human behavior under pressure, the mechanics of austere management. And that gave me power. The power to speak little and decide with weight. The power to influence with a single sentence. The power to say no with authority. This is true learning. The kind that makes you a man who is difficult to manipulate, impossible to deceive, and respected even in silence. And it all starts with your decision today. The decision to treat learning as a sacred discipline, to eliminate the excess, to choose the essential, to repeat until it becomes instinct, and above all, to never settle, to always ask, what is the next skill that will set me free, and pursue it with hunger, humility, and urgency. Little by little, your mind becomes a fortress, your gaze becomes deeper, your presence more imposing, and your trajectory inevitable. Now tell me, are you ready to become someone who learns? Like a strategist? Are you willing to leave the average behind and enter a cycle of absolute mastery over yourself? Then right, my learning is my advantage. Because that's what separates you from the majority, and that's what will put you among those who build empires. I am often asked, how did you remember everything, make decisions with such conviction, lead with such clarity? And I respond with a slight but firm smile. It wasn't about remembering, it was about internalizing. When something is truly learned, it doesn't need to be remembered, it becomes part of you. That's why most of what I've learned in life didn't come from moments of study, but from repeated decisions made with awareness. Repetition is the mother of mastery, and mastery is what separates amateurs from empire builders. Every day, while the world spun in turmoil, I was cultivating mental habits. While some sought novelty, I sought depth. While many wanted to appear intelligent, I wanted to become indispensable. And that's only possible when knowledge becomes internal structure, when the mind stops operating through effort and starts operating through clarity. You can read 50 books on leadership, but if you don't act decisively when confronted, you haven't learned anything. You can watch dozens of videos about money, but if you still spend on impulse, the knowledge hasn't sunk in. That's why I've always directed my learning toward practice, and more than that, toward self-control. Learning fast requires emotional mastery. You can't absorb new ideas if you're always reacting. The reactive mind is too unstable to build something solid. And perhaps this is the most overlooked point in modern education: the connection between self-control and learning. The more you master your emotions, the faster you learn. Because your attention stays focused, your mind doesn't sabotage you, and your body responds with more energy and presence. There were times when, in order to learn something new, I first had to clear out what was polluting my mind. Judgments, pressures, other people's expectations. All of this takes up space that should be available for new mental patterns. And how did I clear it out? With solid routines, with discipline. I had set times for thinking. Yes, thinking. Just thinking. A man who doesn't schedule time to think doesn't deserve freedom, because he will always be reactive. He will always be driven by the noise of the day. And that's another secret. The speed of your learning is proportional to the quality of your reflection time. There's no point in studying without reflecting. You just pile up ideas. But when you reflect, you connect, compare, analyze, and that's where wisdom is born. Do you know how I made strategic decisions with confidence? Because I had thought about them days before? Because I had rehearsed scenarios, anticipated failures, mapped out reactions, all in my mind, all in silence. And that silence, when well cultivated, becomes your greatest weapon. While the world screams, you listen. While everyone runs, you watch. And when everyone hesitates, you already know what to do. Don't want to learn how I learned? Then, start thinking better. Get in the habit of writing down your thoughts. Jot down your discoveries. Mentally organize what is entering your consciousness. Think like a knowledge banker. Every new idea is a deposit. But if you don't organize your account, you won't know where the value is. And you'll live like many live today, full of information, empty of direction. I organized my mind as I organized my business, with clarity, structure, and a margin of safety. If something was too complex, I simplified it. I didn't accept that an idea could remain unclear for long. I looked for metaphors, examples, and connected it to something I already knew. And so, the new found a place within the old and became consolidated. Want to learn fast? Become a mind map builder. Not on paper, in practice. Connect what you've learned with what you already know. Expand the boundaries of understanding with logic, and if something doesn't make sense, don't move forward. Stop, go back, redo it. Because every brick that's poorly laid compromises the structure. What's more, teaching was my biggest accelerator. Every time I needed to consolidate knowledge, I explained it to someone else. Not to impress, but to test my clarity. If I couldn't explain it, I hadn't really understood it. Do you really want to learn? Explain it. Say it out loud. Teach it to a friend. Record yourself. Turn the concept into simple words. This process organizes the brain, strengthens connections, and exposes gaps. This is the mind of a builder, a mind that not only consumes but builds, that not only understands but transmits, that not only seeks but structures. Now, let me touch on an even more sensitive point: the discipline of learning when no one is watching. Many want to learn when they are motivated, when they are inspired, when there is applause. But I learned more in the quiet early hours than in crowded rooms. I learned more when no one expected anything from me. Because that's where the real commitment was. Studying without an audience. Evolving without approval. Growing without applause. That is the root of greatness. And it is this kind of learning that sustains you on difficult days. Because it does not depend on external stimuli. It springs from an internal decision. From an identity: I am someone who learns. Period. And that identity is the most powerful of all. Because it keeps you steady, even when everything around you is changing. It protects you from chaos, and it connects you to the future you want to build. Now tell me, are you ready to take on that identity? Are you ready to learn with method, with purpose, and with a builder's spirit? If you are, say in the comments, "My knowledge is my foundation," because that's what it's about. It's not about memorizing. It's not about looking smart. It's not about collecting titles. It's about building a foundation. So solid that no wind can blow you down. We have reached the part of the journey where few remain. Most start out excited, but abandon the path before seeing the fruits. You are here, and that says a lot about you, because those who make it this far aren't looking for shortcuts. They're looking for transformation. Now, listen carefully. Learning fast, in the end, was never about speed. It was about consistency. True learning is what sticks. It's what shapes you. It's what stays with you when everything external disappears. That's what built my empire. And I'm not just talking about business. I'm talking about mindset, about decisions, about attitude. I'm talking about practical wisdom, the kind that doesn't depend on diplomas or status, but that sustains buildings, resolves crises, and spans generations. I've seen men smarter than me fall because they never knew how to use what they knew. I've seen geniuses stagnate because they never learned how to act. I've seen scholars get stuck because they never turned theory into practice. And I've seen workers, simple men, uneducated, become leaders because they learned with humility, consistency, and daily application. And that is why I want you to understand one thing with absolute clarity. Learning fast is, above all, about becoming someone who acts. If you read a principle and don't change your attitude, you've wasted your time. If you hear an idea and don't change a decision, you've wasted your energy. If you watch a video like this and don't change an action, You're in the same place, only now with more useless information. And this is where everything changes. Because you won't stay in the same place. From now on, you won't study to feel good. You'll study to become unshakable. You won't consume content as a distraction. You'll apply each part as if you were honing a precision tool. You won't seek to learn out of anxiety, but through strategic construction. And you know what will happen? You will begin to realize that, over time, your mind will become faster, but also calmer. Your decisions will be more direct, but also more firm. Your conversations will be shorter, but more impactful. Because true learning doesn't fill you up, it sharpens you. And a sharp man is a dangerous man, in the best sense of the word. He doesn't shout, he commands. He doesn't show strength, but commands respect. He doesn't need to impress, because his mastery speaks for him. And that's the transformation I want to give you. I don't want you to just learn fast. I want you to become someone who carries wisdom in every gesture, who makes informed decisions, who leads with clarity, who grows with consistency, who builds with vision. And for that, here is my final challenge. For you, choose one skill today that, if mastered in the next 12 months, would change your life. Think about it carefully. Maybe it's leadership. Maybe it's sales. Maybe it's organizing your finances, or communicating firmly, or controlling your emotions. Choose one and starting tomorrow. Begin to study it using the method I have taught you here. Study with purpose. Write down the essentials. Apply it the same day. Reflect in silence. Correct with humility. Repeat with discipline. Every day. Not for a week, not for a month, but for long enough that it is no longer a skill, it is a part of you. And when that happens, you will have become what few become, a man of mastery. And no one can take that away from you. No crisis, no government, no opinion, no loss, because what you build inside sustains what you achieve outside. And here is the most important principle of all. You are not learning just for yourself. You are learning for those who will come after you, for the children who will watch you, for the friends who will be inspired, for the clients who will trust you, for the society that will be impacted, because every man who learns deeply becomes a reference. And every empire begins this way, with a quiet decision by an ordinary person who chose to learn like a master. And now that choice is before you. Will you continue consuming, accumulating, procrastinating, like so many do? Or will you stop? Take a deep breath, look inside, and say, enough. From now on, I will learn with purpose, act with discipline, and build with vision. If that is your decision, then I welcome you to a new life, to a new identity, to a new speed of growth. Because, starting today, every piece of content you access, every book you open, every conversation you have, will be a seed. And you will be the farmer. And remember, no matter how slow the growth, what matters is that the roots are deep. Because a tree with strong roots can weather any storm. And you, right now, are that tree. So here's my final piece of advice. Protect your mind. Protect your routine. Protect your discipline. And keep learning. Because the most powerful empire you will ever build is not out there. It's in there. And a man who masters his mind is a man who can master anything. If this touched your soul, if this mentoring spoke to your spirit, share this video with someone you love, someone who needs to learn how to learn, someone who deserves more out of life but doesn't know where to start. And if you want to continue this journey with me, if you want to be part of a generation that thinks, grows, and transforms the world with purpose, then sign up. But don't do it because it's trendy. Sign up as someone who is making a pact. a commitment to become someone worthy of your own vision for the future. Because, in the end, the greatest wealth we can build is a strong mind, a steadfast heart, and a life with purpose. Now go, apply, transform, and never stop growing.